to pretend. Jesus says in the Garden of Gethsemane, not by my will, but your will be done. Yes?
Human nature speaking, yeah.
Meaning, allegedly, but there's no evidence for that in the Bible. But there's no evidence from what Jesus is saying.
Is there counter evidence?
You have to bring me evidence that Jesus is saying that I'm fully man, fully God.
I mean, you'd have to also bring counter evidence. An
No, it's
argument
not.
from silence doesn't really hold.
No,
he does say that.
You have to have evidence from the text.
I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning
I've
and
got,
the end.
I don't, because I'm not a sola scriptura Christian.
I've got evidence where Jesus is saying in a plain reading of the text without trying to interpret it and try to put what I've been taught
With
in
no
my head.
tafsir. Yeah.
Yes, without me trying to
having any tafsir,
twist it. That the plain reading of what Jesus is saying is that not by my will, but your will be done. By definition, God has one will. Yes.
That's complicated. Jesus had a human nature will, so it's kind of complicated. The hypostasis complicates that.
So how many wills did Jesus have?
2.
Does he have?
Human nature
So
and
it's got
nature.
two wills.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
In the hypostasis, yeah.
That
And I also want to jump back to something you just said. You said in a plain reading it says X, Y, Z. I don't think we need to rely on plain readings at all times. Just like Allah having 2 right hands. If I gave that a plain reading, I would think Allah has hands and has 2 right hands. And as a plain reading, that doesn't make sense. So I don't think plain readings are always...
No, we're talking about Jesus. And we're talking about the attributes of God. We're talking about the definition of God.
I'm just saying,
yes.
plain readings aren't always the best way to go. Plain readings aren't always the best way to go. You can't rely on the most.
We have a consistent principle, yes, which is, anyway, I don't want to change the topic, but we leave the text the way that it is. You know this, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the plain reading of the text.
Plain readings aren't always correct.
Do you understand?
I can understand that
I'm doing what you. The way I read your text is the way that I read my text. Is that I leave the text the way that is. I don't try to change the text
you
or say.
The text.
Yes. No.
But you don't have the Holy Spirit to interpret it. That's the thing.
Read the text as it is, right?
You interpret it
only if there's evidence that we can do ta'wil. There has to be an evidence for that. Or there's something within the text that is apparent within the text that you can extract. That is already in the text.
We would say that you can extract
so
the Trinity from
in this passage where Jesus says that not by my will or your will be done.
Humanity speaking.
Yes, there's no reason to believe that there is that is divine there, or that there's two human nature and divine nature. That's an assumption that's not in the text.
Not in that specific verse, but
so where did you say that I am God? I have two natures.
I mean, in Luke, where he says, "If I am to be perfect, what am I to do? Take up your cross and follow me, not follow God." We would say that's an indication of being God. Who is he to forgive sins? Only God can forgive sins.
No, but but in that same passage in Matthew. Okay. So in that same passage, yes.
I know what you're about to say. Go on.
He says that they revered. They said that they were speaking about how great God is because God gave him authority to forgive sin. Yes. In Matthew, I believe. Yes. So the point that I'm making to you is that the Trinity concept explicitly is not in the text. Our creed is there, chapter 112. Yes, it's there in the text, right? But you're trying to formulate a creed outside the text.
We would say that the creed is evidenced in the text.
Okay,
throughout the text.
Give me an evidence where Jesus is claiming to be divine. He says, "I am God."
Well, we don't have him explicitly saying I am God.
Okay, so then you shouldn't believe that.
Well, there's other factors involved. The Trinity is a product of a set of requirements. We see Jesus behaving in a way that can only be attributed to God. And the Bible says Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. So if there is one God, and we also have Jesus behaving in a way in which only God can, then we have to come up with a way to make that work.
Okay, so yeah, it's not sufficient to say that. It's because there has to be an active claim. Because if you're going to make that massive jump that say he's God and all the other prophets that came before,
It's not a massive jump.
it's a massive
We
jump.
don't say the prophets that came before are wrong. We just say they had a limited way, a limited set of words for it. It's like progressive revelation. You know the idea of progressive revelation. Certain things are disclosed at certain points in time.
So Jesus says certain things that disqualify him from being God. For example, he's saying in the Garden of Gethsemane, as I said before, in a plain reading of the text, without trying to push the Trinity on it.
Plain readings aren't always correct.
But you're pushing the Trinity on it, though. No, our creed is very clear in the Quran. Yeah, it's chapter 112. I'm talking about creed. Yes. So you have to have a clear-cut evidence that Jesus is claiming to be God. Yes, for you to extract that from the text.
Clear-cut is a bit subjective.
No, it's not subjective. If I say I am Asian, you cannot say that I'm Brazilian afterwards.
Did Jesus say he isn't God?
Well, that's a negative. You cannot prove a negative.
You can.
If you're claiming, is he God?
Am I saying?
Is Jesus God?
Yes.
Where is the clear-cut evidence from Jesus' mouth that he's saying that he's God?
Jesus did things, behaved in certain ways that can only be
Ambiguous.
It is, yeah, ambiguous, 100%.
So the foundation of your belief is ambiguous.
Well, the foundation of my belief isn't the Bible. The foundation of my belief is the Catholic Church.
Okay,
And the church came before the Bible.
Okay, sure, but is Jesus' words more authoritative than the church?
Sorry, say that again.
Is Jesus' words more authoritative than the church?
Who was it that claimed that the Gospels are the words of Jesus? Who was it that proclaimed that to be true?
No, what I'm saying.
The church said that those 4 books.
Okay, sure. Yes. They canonize the 4 Gospels. Yes, but the point that I'm making, and then okay, sure.
Because they came from the church. So
And
because something isn't necessarily present in the Gospels doesn't mean it's not true. Like the assumption of Mary, the sinlessness of Mary isn't in the Gospels. It's not explicitly, but the church says it's true. Just as the church says the Bible is true. So
okay, sure. But the point that I'm making is that there are Unitarian Christians, and there are Binitarian Christians that have a different reading of the text.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are definitely varied. Because I was trying to say earlier, I don't think that if you have a piece of text, I don't think there is any objective interpretation. You could give someone one page of a book and you'd get different interpretations from different people. Which is why I say a plain reading isn't always the best.
But what I would say is that you cannot.
Again, tafsirs exist for a reason.
You cannot have a definitive understanding of who is God then, because you don't have a creed. You don't have in the text.
We can have that because
It's
we believe
speculation.
The Catholic Church is infallible. Is what I would say. The Catholic Church
then,
is infallible. So if all people could look at their text and have a different interpretation, I have to trust at least one of the interpretations, and I defer it to the church. Is what I would say.
Yeah, so you're blindly from the church then.
Not exactly blindly. I still engage my rationality, but I would say the church is the authoritative source on interpretations.
But like, for example, in John 20:17, where they just, I don't know what happened to the guys, but yeah. So Jesus is saying, I'm going back to my God and your God. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the verses that Unitarian Christians bring, right?
Yeah.
Without trying to impose a Trinitarian viewpoint on it.
And I would also say, in defense, obviously I'm not a Unitarian, but as I was saying, I think different people can interpret text differently and be reasonable in doing so, which is why I think you need a standard interpretive body. It's like how the Quran had different vowels and diacritics, and then it was standardized under Caliph Uthman because they wanted to have one standard understanding of how the text was laid out rather than having different.
It's a different topic. Uthman radiallahu anhu, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not criticizing
No,
the Quran
no.
here. I'm just trying to make.
It's not
similarity.
creed. It's not creed. Because I'm talking about creed. If the creed is unclear, okay, and the creed is not in the text, you would have to investigate further and say, look,
You'd have to
Okay,
impose
okay.
philosophy and all sorts of.
but philosophy is not sufficient when you're trying to make, because you can use philosophy to have Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and also Mary, or also
Yeah, that did exist.
you
in the
can
early days.
yeah. So you can have other, you can have Docetism. Oh, thank you, Sakura.
You can have all sorts of
Docetism,
different-
or you can have modalism. You can have partialism, which was there's a lot of thought
different
processes.
interpretations,
Yes, of who is Jesus, and that is the evidence that there's no certainty about the concept of God.
Which is why I would again counter my certainty is that I believe there's one authoritative interpretive body. And this holds quite well because the Bible didn't exist until the Catholic Church canonized it. The Bible as it exists was canonized by the Catholic Church.
How do you know they got it right?
How do I know they got it right? Because they were given the power to. I mean, sacred
Just because they got it,
tradition-
just because they got the power to do certain things doesn't mean that they got it right.
Well, if they were given the power by God to be infallible.
Do you believe? Sorry,
If they were given that power to be infallible, then yeah.
but but we believe that that's like that's kind of a bit shocking that like mere mortal men that are fallible.
They're fallible except when speaking.
So do you believe that
ex-cathedra.
they have like the Holy Spirit and they can just get everything right?
Only certain things, faith and morals. When they're speaking ex cathedra from the chair, if they're speaking on matters of faith and morals, they are prevented by the power of God from committing error.
So how do you know what is correct and what is incorrect?
Say that again?
So how do you know what is incorrect and correct?
The Catholic Church.
That's
Church has
crazy,
the power
man.
of God.
We Muslims don't just blindly follow. We don't do that.
You blindly follow Zayd ibn Thabit, the person that compiled the Quran after the Prophet Muhammad's death.
But he wasn't a academic.
Is he infallible?
He was an academic.
But is he infallible?
Yes, absolutely. He's a human being. Yes. However, he has the credentials and he has the academic credentials that he directly learned the Quran from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
No, he didn't. He collected
He did.
attestations from
No, he did.
paper,
No,
parchment.
he did. He directly learned the Quran from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So why did he have to collect the Quran from people to compile it into
because of academia. Because if they just said, okay, we've memorized it, we don't need the text, okay, we don't need the written parchments, let's just compile it by memory, that would not be academic enough and rigorous enough.
So
even though
he didn't have to consult anyone, he could have done it from his own memory.
they could have got the...
The one person, Zayd ibn.
But that's not academic though.
But could he have done it? Are you saying that he did have all of it in his
Yes,
own mind?
yeah.
Okay.
But if I want to standardize a text for the masses, then there has to be a rigorous academic process.
So he was present with the Prophet at it when every verse of the Quran was spoken through the mouth of the Prophet. Zayd was there.
Zayd was there, and there were companions there, and there were many companions.
He took the attestation from the companions, not a direct.
The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was teaching the Quran to the companions, yes, and they were learning directly from him. Zayd ibn Thabit, you have Uthman radiallahu anhu.
Zayd compiled the Quran from what?
Okay.
From his own mind. Did he have all of it in his own mind? First-hand knowledge from the Prophet?
So he memorized it.
All of it?
All of it himself, yes.
Directly from the mouth of the Prophet?
Yes.
Or through other people?
Yeah, direct from the Prophet ﷺ, yes. And
so
others.
Zayd
The
was
combination.
there at every verse recitation.
No, there were companions that would recite the Quran in prayer, in salat, and they'll memorize it.
Zayd learned secondhand.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
first and second hand.
Okay,
The point that I'm making, let me make the point, right, is that this is the first Quran, which was the Suhuf, was compiled by Zayd ibn Thabit in a council, and he was selected for it specifically because he was very proficient in his memory and he was very proficient in the Quran. Yes. So what he did is that he was commissioned by Abu Bakr in the 12 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. Yes. And then, even though there were thousands of companions that memorized it cover to cover by a heart, right? It didn't go just by memorization.
Not everyone at the time had memorized it all by heart. They had memorized what they had access to.
No, they memorized all
How
of
did they
it.
if it wasn't compiled yet?
Because there's a place called in Medina called El Sufa. They were learning the Quran and they were memorizing it, right? Even during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he was memorized. If you do research into it, yes. So they were in Medina. There were people that were not non-Arabs as well, and they were memorizing it in this school. It's called El Sufa. All they did is that they just stayed in this specific place, and they learned the Quran, memorized it, learned it, and these things, yes. And they were graduates, and they were Hufaz, yes. So Zayd ibn Thabit, for each verse, there were two companions that said, I wrote down this verse in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that person had two witnesses. Does that make sense?
Two witnesses so you have the Prophet Muhammad, and then you have the companion who says, I wrote this down in the presence of the Prophet, and
yes.
There are two people that agreed.
That saw him write it down, yeah?
Cool.
Okay, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, so this was the criteria, because there was second-hand, writings as well. You have primary evidence and you have secondary evidence. So secondary writings were rejected because that's not primary evidence, yes? So then when Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he compiled the Quran like this, and that's how they compiled the Quran, yes? Which is in the 12th Hijri, right? Then this was given to Hafsa, which is the daughter of Uthman radiallahu anh, yes? Right? And then that was the early codex, yes? Then Uthman again compiled his codex, right? And he made 7 copies.
Was he infallible?
Every human is fallible. Every human is. But we believe that they were divinely guided by God. That's our.
There you go. We believe the Catholic Church is.
But we can academically understand.
Can you academically prove that they were guided by God?
No, absolutely not. That's why we can academically check how they compiled it. Yes. So
why was Caliph Uthman's compilation correct and everyone else's wasn't?
So there's
because he was guided by God.
No, it's because he academically put everything together. That's my point. You cannot. I'm not gonna say like they had the Holy Spirit, whatever. I'm saying you can academically check it. Because
you can academically check the Caliph Uthman's compilation
yes.
was correct and the other ones weren't. What was wrong with the other ones?
It was because there's difference between qira'at and it's called haruf, yes? Sorry. There's like a difference in that. So qira'at is, they were masters of recitation. So there are 7 modes of recitation, and they go all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So they are approved by the Prophet ﷺ. They are like hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that the Quran has been revealed in 7 modes of recitation. Yes. So he himself is affirming that you can recite the Quran in 7 different like dialects, we can say, yeah, because the Quraysh, because the Arabs were very harsh people. They were not recited in one dialect.
Yes.
Yes. So there was a leniency where you can recite the Quran in several dialects. Yes.
So is the only difference between Caliph Uthman's compilation and the others, is the only difference dialect? Is that the only difference?
Yes. So it was standardized in one dialect, which is the Qurayshi dialect. Yes. Because if someone's a non-Arab speaking individual, they would not understand the nuances, and they'll get confused because they don't understand Arabic and they cannot read it without the diacritical marks. I can read like some of it, but not all of it, right? So the point that I'm making is that so when Uthman compiled it, he compiled his codex, is that he could have just went to memorizes and so on and so forth, but what he did is that he compiled his own codex. Again, he appointed Zayd ibn Thabit again, and rather than him getting the old codex, he again compiled it from scratch. So then he got more. He got again for each verse. For each verse, he got two people that wrote it down in the presence of Prophet Muhammad sallam, witnessed it. Yes, and then he compiled he compiled it like this, and then he looked at the codex of Abu Bakr, right, and they aligned with one another, and then thousands of it was consensus of companions. So the
consensus of the companions that were asked. You don't know if there weren't ones that were not asked. So out of all of the people that were asked, the argument is that there was a consensus of two.
No, there's no hundreds of companions, hundreds of companions that memorized it.
Yes, memorized it from who?
Directly from the Prophet Muhammad sallam.
But you said there was only two needed
for each verse. So
yeah.
So the verses.
Yeah.
So when they were compiling it, they didn't go by memory. It's just actually what they've written down. Yes. So when Uthman compiled it, it's because he standardized the spelling. Because of the way. Yes, because in different dialects you have different words. Like for example, color. In America you spell color with this.
Yeah. Except diacritics can sometimes very vaguely change the meanings of words, very very gently.
We will say is that the diacritical markings were there to keep the pronunciations correct.
Okay, but is it only pronunciations that change with diacritical changes?
We don't know.
That's true.
No.
So when there were competing diacritics, and Caliph Uthman picked a certain
Duali,
one,
yes, yeah.
What makes one set of diacritics right and the rest of them wrong? Where diacritics can
There's
change
no rest of them, that he put those markings in place so that you can recite correctly.
Yeah, but we're saying that his compilation
That's
was
it.
taken over. You said it was Qur'an, and the 7 modes. There's arguments about what's the word something.
Harf, yes.
Which is a word that we don't know what it means. I found that out. There's no way to know what that word originally meant, but that's beside the point. What we're saying is there were different...
It means a mode of recitation.
Well, we don't know that for sure. Scholars are divided on that topic. That word wasn't used anywhere else at the time. But my point is if he made his own codex, different from other codexes that were at the time, because he was trying to standardize diacritics.
There was no other codex at that time.
Okay. Why not? What do you mean? Sorry.
It's because there was an Abu Bakr codex, yes?
And whatever Zayd had compiled.
Yeah,
there's
he compiled it. He compiled the first one.
Yes.
With the Council of Companions, yeah? Mm-hmm. So remember, this is consensus of disciples of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, yes? There were hundreds and hundreds of companions agreed with that text, yes?
Well, two of them agreed on each verse, but there were hundreds involved. So each verse may only have two companions that agree. So you can't say hundreds of them agreed on the whole Quran.
On the whole Quran, yes.
Two of them agreed on each verse.
No, I don't understand the point. When he was compiling it, look, they memorized it and they know how it is. They could have avoided making it because the Quran is a recital, yes? It's to recite the Quran, yes?
Yeah, but the problem with the recitation of the Quran is not every person that attested to the verses was present for every single thing that Muhammad said. So even if there were two people and one of them was there for half of what Muhammad said and the other one was there for the other half, you can't say that two people attested to the whole Quran, because one person attested to half of it and one person attested to the other one. So if you say every verse was only attested by two people, then maybe you have many
when the
thousands of
Quran
verses.
was brought together,
Yes.
because the academic research was done by Zayd ibn Thabit and the council of companions,
Yes.
and then when they compiled it later, there were others that said, okay, this is the Quran, because they memorized it as well, right? So when they memorized it, they could, because if I just blindly follow you and say, okay, you compile, like you blindly follow the church, yeah? Like you kind of
Blindly is a strange way to put it.
like the Bible, you just blindly follow it without knowing where it came from. Like literally, you don't know who is Mark and Matthew.
Well, we have pretty good attestation to who Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were.
But nowhere in the text does it say that I am Mark writing. This is my
Well, yeah, because
words.
it's a Greco-Roman biography. It's like how Annals by Tacitus wasn't attributed to Tacitus until 300 years later.
no.
It's just how Greco-Roman biographies work.
And I'm talking about the actual text.
We have recitations. Yeah, exactly. Greco-Roman biographies tended to not say within their own text who the author was. Again, the Annals by Tacitus is a great example of this. Saint Jerome, 300 years after its composition, was the first person to attribute it to Tacitus, but we agree. Because that's just how Greco-Roman
No, but even
biographies work. But within a century, we had people attesting to Matthew, Mark,
we
Luke,
don't
and
know
John.
who is Mark. It's 185 CE when Irenaeus was saying that this is Mark and this is Matthew, right? He's according to Mark, Matthew, Luke, whatever, yeah? So it is not...
We had attestations before Irenaeus, but the one that's usually cited is Irenaeus.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's no way that you could know where it was in the Greek language, which is not the language of Jesus. And I've come across any evidence to suggest that Jesus was speaking Greek. I haven't come across any evidence for that. People have tried to make crazy claims that he was speaking Greek, but there's no evidence for that.
I won't make that claim.
Yeah, great.
I mean, I would say he could because he's God, but I don't.
But that's something that we cannot academically. So the point I'm making is that when we say the Quran has been compiled, we have an academic way of actually verifying it, because even the memorization of the Quran.
You have an academic way to verify it using your own criteria, and your own criteria is each verse was attested by two people.
Yeah.
Only two per each verse.
For every single verse that was put in the Quran, two people said that, two people.
Doesn't sound very strong.
A person, if I said this verse, for example, the first verse of the Quran, yeah?
That first verse has two people that attest to it.
A person that wrote down that verse in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, yes, and two people said, I was there when he wrote it down. I saw him write it down.
It's two people.
Two people, yeah.
So there could be
and the Bible doesn't have nothing like that.
Well, I mean, no, it doesn't have exactly that. But I don't.
So how do you know?
Your problem is that you're saying that the Quran is definitely the word of God, and it definitely hasn't been corrupted.
It's been preserved, yeah.
But that's a really strange claim to make. If your actual basis for that claim is each verse has two attestations, two is not a lot of people.
Okay, how do you know who is Mark? Mark, we don't know who is Mark. We don't know. It's 70 years.
Turning it around.
because you're trying to throw glasses. You're trying to throw a stone when your house is made out of glass. Yeah, by the New Testament, even the Old Testament as well. They are breaks in transmission.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
But we've
the
already
scrolls are
established-
1,500
we've already
years.
established I don't think the Bible stands on its own merit. I think the Bible
Even,
stands because the church stands.
even-
But your problem is your
but-
faith is entirely built on the Quran, and you have no strong evidence that it hasn't
It's,
been corrupted.
people have memorized the Quran cover to cover by heart, and
Only
you
two
change
people attested to each verse.
every single verse, and you don't think that's
So
credible.
Two people. It would only take two people
You're being
to
biased
lie.
now, man.
It would only take two people to lie to make one verse of the Quran wrong.
Okay, why do you think that they're lying, man?
But they could.
Good. They're not lying. These people were fighting alongside the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They gave their life for him. They fought their own family
Just like
members.
The disciples dying to preach that Jesus resurrected.
Yeah, sure, but
it
you're,
give them
but you're saying that they
credibility?
were
Does it give
lying,
someone
though.
credibility if they
Yeah, but and they spread the religion to China, to Rome, to Persia, to Africa, to Spain. These same companions, these same companions that you're saying that were lying, when they actually
They could have
spread
been
the
wrong.
religion.
They could have been wrong. They could have been.
Let me give you the evidence for Islam. Yeah, if the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ makes specific prophecies about the future, and they come true, would you accept that as a prophet? Because it's not about being biased. Number one, the Quran academically
Because he
is
also
more
made
reliable.
prophecies that were wrong. He also made scientific claims that were wrong.
Which one?
Seminal fluid doesn't come from between the backbone and the rib.
Okay.
It doesn't even mix.
What are the seminal vesicles?
Huh?
Seminal vesicles.
What does reciple mean?
Seminal vesicles.
I don't know what the reciple is. But,
Okay, so if you
seminal
look at-
fluid comes from the prostate, and semen comes from.
Seminal vesicles are where there's the Quran says ma, meaning water. It doesn't say sperm. Yes.
That's why I said seminal fluid.
Yes. It says water. It says ma. The word in Surah Tariq, don't use ma. Yes. It's not used nutfa. Use ma, meaning water. So the seminal vesicles are adjacent to the testes and the lower rib cage. If you do your research, look into it, and 75% of it is water, yes, and that enters and that goes towards the testes, right, and then mix, and there's sperm. So then you are incorrect in that, right? So the point that I'm making to you, do your
Can you
research.
repeat that again?
Yes, seminal vesicles. You know what they? I just Google it. Seminal vesicles. They are adjacent to the ribs and the. So it's like in the middle.
Spell that.
Seminal, S-E-M-I. I'm a bit cold. Semi.
And then what's the second word?
Vesicles.
Reciple.
Vesicles. F-E-S-I-C-L-E-S. I'm a bit cold. Yeah. I look at a diagram. Yeah, you just see it. It says like 75% of fluid is generated there.
Vesicle?
Vesicles, seminal vesicles.
That word?
Seminal. Yeah, there you go. That's some homework for you, yeah? So,
I just know that it's not true. Like that
okay,
fact is
but
absolutely not true.
you haven't.
The closest
If you
I've
don't know what is a seminal vesicle, you don't know the biology then, I would say. Because you didn't know what they
What
were.
about the lowest layer of the seven heavens? What about the length of a heaven being 500 years of marching? Is that true?
Where is that? I don't know.
I won't be able to quote it off.
Okay, yeah.
But my point is you're
Okay.
gonna
But
say
why don't you accept Islam? That's a point that I'm making, because Trinity doesn't make any sense.
That's a really strange thing to say. Doesn't make any sense. Does God have to make sense to you?
Well, you're saying that God died, and God
Does
was
God have to make sense?
has to be rational to a point where you don't worship, for example, idol.
I would agree.
So we don't worship idol, right? So that's a sensical statement. So worshipping a human being is a nonsensical. I would say it's rational to believe in one
Why do you
supreme
think
being.
that's nonsensical? What tells you that it's nonsensical?
Because
Leave the Quran,
human,
leave
okay,
the Quran to the
okay,
side.
no
If
problem.
you were to say God has to make sense and you can't worship it,
Okay,
then why does that?
would you worship a tree?
Well, no, probably
Okay,
not.
so then you're using your intellect and your rationality, yes? So worshipping a man is irrational
But we're
because
not
a man is
worshipping a
limited.
man.
Do you believe that Jesus is God?
Yes, Jesus is God.
Yes, yeah. There you go then. So that's why you're denying
But
it.
I'm not worshipping a man. I just said Jesus is God. I'm worshipping God, not a man.
Okay, so yeah, he's a man though, right?
Fully God, fully man.
Okay, yeah.
God took on a human nature, yes.
God man. So if anyone
Worshipping
that
God.
is
I'm
a
not
contradiction.
worshipping the human nature. I'm not saying I'm so glad that Jesus had a human nature. I'm worshipping God.
Okay, but
God
he is
part.
God, right? He is man and God. So you're worshipping the man
I'm
and God at the
worshipping
same
one
time.
person, and the one person
Are you
has
separating them?
Huh?
Are you separating them?
Separating them from.
Or because are you separating the man and the God nature? Or you
No,
just say,
I just
okay.
said I'm worshipping the one person.
Okay, so he's
The
a person
one
in Trinity, yes?
Stop talking. I'm worshipping the one person, and the one person has two natures. I'm not specifically saying I'm worshipping the human part. I'm worshipping the person with two natures.
You can't. There is one person in Trinity. He's a man God, right? And the
No,
human nature and the
he is
man nature
God
don't.
with a-
Yeah, he's a man God. A man God makes no sense. Because you're saying that God became limited in a confined space.
Say that again.
God became limited in a confined space.
God voluntarily limited. The divine
Yeah.
nature voluntarily.
Yeah, so it makes no sense. That's an irrational
But
belief.
does God have to make sense?
Yes,
God has to make sense.
by definition, yeah.
So do you think infinity makes sense?
I'm saying by definition, God is one. That makes sense.
But God is infinite, right?
Yes,
Okay.
He's
Does
infinitely
infinity
one.
make sense to you?
He's infinitely one, yes. But the point that I'm making is that you worship only one God, because if there were two gods, what would happen?
Does infinity make sense?
Wait.
No, 'cause you're jumping.
If there were two gods, what would
I don't
happen?
worship two gods.
If there were two gods, there'd be conflict, and there'll be disorder in the universe.
Do you think
a
an
disorder
actual
in the universe.
infinity makes sense? You say God has to make sense.
I'm
So does
saying
an
by
actual
definition has to make sense.
Yeah, but God by definition is infinite.
By definition, a tree cannot be God. A
By
man
definition,
cannot be
God
God.
is infinite.
By
Does infinity
okay,
make sense?
is a man infinite?
You're avoiding the question. You said God has to make sense.
Is a man infinite?
I said, does God have
Wait,
to make
wait.
sense? And you said yes. And I
But
said, is
you-
infinity?
okay.
Does infinity make sense? And you are saying
But you're avoiding the point.
no. You're
The
avoiding my
point
question.
is
You
that
said God has to make sense. Does infinity make sense?
is
to
a
you?
man
Can you
infinite or
comprehend-
limited?
Can you comprehend infinity?
No,
Your God is
no,
infinite.
no,
Your God is
no.
infinite. Yes.
Your God
God
is
is
a
infinite.
man. Is a man infinite?
Your God is infinite. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Does infinity make sense?
Is a man?
Can you conceptualize infinity?
It's.
Does actual infinity work?
I cannot comprehend it now.
Great, thank you. So does God have to make sense?
Okay. I'm saying.
Because you say my God doesn't make
Okay,
sense.
let me finish what I'm saying
and I
at
say
least.
to you,
I'm saying is that if you're saying that God is creation,
God
a
is
man,
creation.
a man,
God
or a
took on
tree,
human nature.
these physical things are limited and not infinite. Do you understand?
Yes, God took on a human nature to
Okay.
voluntarily limit himself.
That's nonsensical because a man is limited, not
It's
unlimited.
nonsensical. You just said
Okay.
God can't be comprehended.
So we're saying that
Do you think
Allah.
your
Wait. Allah.
limited human mind can comprehend God? to
Allah
every
does not
degree?
enter His creation because
Why
He's infinite.
So he can't.
He does not. He won't never do that. Why? Is because He's not limited. He's infinite.
So that's something he can't do.
Would you? He won't
You
do
said
that.
Because he's infinite, he can't enter the world.
No, because He won't do that.
Make a lot of difference, isn't it?
Because limiting Himself is
Not God.
is not God anymore.
So God can't do it.
He wouldn't do it. No.
He wouldn't do that.
But he can't
Okay.
do it because if he
By
did it,
definition,
not
God is
God.
one. God is
God
independent.
God can't enter the material world because God is infinite. And if God entered the material world, he would stop being infinite. Ergo, God can't enter the material world. Is that what you're saying?
it's an impossible choice for him.
So he can't do it.
No, I said it's an impossible choice for him. You have to understand my
Impossible for God
statement.
to do it.
nothing
What's
is
my
impossible.
statement?
You said God is infinite.
You're twisting my
God is
statement.
infinite.
I said it's an impossible choice for him, so
You said God is
he would
infinite.
never do it.
You said
Or would
God
you
is
eat?
infinite.
Or would you eat
You said
excretion?
God is infinite.
Would
The
you
world
eat?
is finite.
Would you?
So God won't enter creation. because
Would
it's
you?
finite.
Would
God is infinite. So
would
you're
you
saying
eat
it's an impossible
toenails?
choice for God to make.
Would you eat toenails?
No, probably not.
Okay.
I mean, I could.
Would
I don't
you?
think I want to.
Would you ever eat it?
So can God
It's
enter
an
creation if he
impossible
wanted to?
choice for you.
Huh?
It's an impossible choice for
You
you.
ask the question again.
I'm saying that would you eat excretion?
I would.
Is
I
it-
could
is-
if I wanted to, but I don't particularly want
Okay, is that possible?
to. Possible.
Okay, right. But would you make that choice?
Not unless I had a traumatic head injury. No.
no, no. So it's an impossible choice for you.
So
Yeah.
it's impossible for God to choose
It's
to
an-
enter creation.
Yes.
So it's impossible for God to
Not
choose.
impossible.
no.
These
It's
words
an
are very
impossible
big.
choice.
Impossible choice.
He
It's
would
impossible
no.
for God
He
to
would
choose
not
to do
choose that.
something.
Same way that
impossible
you would
that God
never.
wouldn't choose to do it.
You would never choose to eat excretion. Yes. Why? It's because it's. Yes. You never do
So
that.
it's an impossible choice.
Even
for
if
God to
someone
enter
paid you
creation.
£1 million, you never do that. Yes.
Ooh, if we're going to £1 million, I like
I don't know.
One thing,
So
one
are you
thing, one thing. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in Surah Hadith that He creates heaven and earth and in between in 6 days, and after that He istawa on arsh.
Yes, yeah.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Zat is always in astawa, in arsh.
Yes, he's,
over
he's,
there,
he's above the
and he
seven
don't
heavens
need to.
in his glory. He doesn't
Yes,
enter his
he
creation,
don't
become
need
limited
to.
and finite,
He can
and then
see you, he knows
then be
where
killed by
you
his
are.
creation.
That's
Yeah,
it. Very simple.
it is. It doesn't make no sense that God was killed by his because then he's eternal and then he died.
No, these girls.
Come to Islam. Islam makes a lot of sense. Allah is one, independent, has no parents, has no
God
children.
can't enter creation if he wants to.
Sorry?
Even if God wanted to, he can't enter creation.
No, I said
No need to.
It's impossible for
No
God
need
to want to enter
no need
creation.
to. If
Yes,
something
because
is
he's perfect.
possible,
So there's something God can't do.
no.
don't do
I
that.
said he would never make that choice. It's a different. I try to twist my
impossible.
words
It's
because you're stuck.
impossible.
That's why you're trying
It's impossible for
to
him to
twist
make
my
that choice.
words.
It's impossible for him
Yes,
to make that choice.
please don't try to
It's
twist my
impossible
words.
for God to make that choice.
Yes.
So there's something God can't do. God can't make that choice.
No.
We have a
He
choice.
would not
We
make
have
that
a
choice.
We
Are
have
you
a
okay?
choice.
You need
No,
do
that
you
was
need
so funny.
do you need some tablets or something? Why are you screaming like that?
I need it later.
It's strange. The strange sort of sound there.
I just said.
But
you said.
the same way,
it's impossible for God to make the choice to enter
because
creation.
it goes against his nature.
So there's something God can't
Because
do.
he's perfect.
So there's something God can't do. It's
God-
impossible for
God can do
to make the
everything.
choice to enter creation.
God-
So there's something God can't do.
Come on, you're
Say
being
you are
irrational
deceiving
now.
yourself.
Yeah.
Why are you deceiving
Yeah.
yourself? Everything
You're
is
being
clear.
irrational, right?
Why are you
Is
deceiving
that God can do
yourself?
everything, but He chooses not to do that.
God can't make the choice
No,
to
God
enter
can't.
No,
creation.
The
no.
word can't.
God would
You said it's
never
an
make that
impossible
choice. He would never make
Can
that
he make
choice,
Is
right?
it
Never.
possible that he could?
No.
So there's
no,
something God can't do?
No.
No, he would.
No.
He could do everything, but he
never do
doesn't
that.
go against his nature. For example,
it's impossible for him to do that.
can God cease to exist?
No.
No, right? So he can never do that.
So what about God's nature?
Wait.
makes it impossible?
He's stuck.
Can
he's
he-
stuck.
can he never do that?
He's stuck now. He's stuck now. He won't go there. He won't go there.
Can God cease to exist?
No.
So then you're saying that it's impossible for God to do something.
Yes, I would say it's impossible for God to stop existing.
Okay,
I think
so
it's
then-
hold on.
then
Hold on.
God
I'm making,
can't-
no. I'm making an internal critique on your own theology. You can make one of mine if you want to. I think it's impossible for God to make contradictions. Yeah.
Okay, so becoming a man and being limited, being unlimited and limited is an impossible existence.
It's absolutely possible for an infinitely powerful God to make
be
the
limited.
choice to voluntarily
And be
limit
unlimited at
himself.
the same time.
Well, no, because he voluntarily limited himself. It's the choice of
But
like,
is he
hang on,
always-
hang on. If I hold a
No,
hammer, if I hold
it's
a hammer,
impossible. It's like you saying, I saw a very tall man and a short man at the same time.
no. If I hold a
It's an
hammer,
impossible existence.
If I hold a hammer in my hand, I'm deciding to hold a hammer in my hand. As long as I'm holding the hammer in my hand, I have a hammer in my hand. I have a choice to put the hammer down. If God voluntarily limits himself, then he's voluntarily limiting himself. If he has the power to stop
But you're saying that God is infinite, yes?
If he has the power to put the hammer down, then God is no longer holding a hammer. Does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't make sense now. I'm saying to you is that we all say is that God does not cease to exist, right? Because he's eternally al-hayy. He is ever living, eternally. Yes. Therefore, Allah does not cease to exist. Yes. Allah doesn't lie. Why? Because he's Allah.
He lies to the people that are witnessing the crucifixion. He's the greatest of schemers. He created Christianity by making it appear as if.
No, it doesn't say
Jesus
that.
It says he was the greatest of schemers. It does say that.
It says that this is something that when the creation plot and plan against the believers or Allah, then through his perfection, he plots against them because because they are trying to plot against him.
Yeah, so
he
can lie if there are deceivers.
He is the best of plan. They plan against Allah.
Yeah, and he plans back to deceive.
Yes, for his perfection, not to deceive.
To make it appear as if Jesus
No.
was crucified.
Their history wrote down that they killed Jesus, son of Mary, right? But they did not crucify him.
Because Allah
they did not know. It appeared to them. So
who caused it to appear to them that way?
Okay, Allah.
So he lied.
No,
he made something that wasn't true appear to be true.
No, it's that they wanted something to happen.
Yep.
Okay, and it appeared to them, but in reality, God would not abandon His prophet like that.
Yes, so
because the people around them were evil and tried to kill the prophet, Jesus. Then Allah purified him and saved him, right? And this is the glory of Allah, and this is the magnificence of Allah, right?
He can deceive the onlookers.
No, that He saved His prophet. But you want to say that because you're infatuated with God dying on the cross, because your whole belief. Your whole belief is fixed on just one thing, is that God died on the cross. God died for your sins. That's why you're saying that to me.
Fixed upon the resurrection.
Okay, and there's contradictions in the resurrection. And there's contradictions in the resurrection. You know, I have to go soon anyway. But the point that I'm making to you is that in your belief is a nonsensical belief, because you believe that God is unlimited and limited at the same time.
God can choose to be limited.
But it's a contradiction. Okay, can you see a man that's the tallest man in the world and the shortest man in the world at the same time?
If you have a man,
is that possible?
If you have a man
wait. Answer my question. Can you see a person that's the tallest man in the world and the shortest man in the world at the same time?
Is he God?
Is it possible?
Is he God?
Is it possible?
Is he God?
Is it possible?
Is the tall, short man God?
Irrational. That's an irrational belief about a man God that is unlimited and limited at the same time. A tree. Someone said, look, a tree is God. God became a tree.
If God wanted to become a tree, unlike you, my God isn't
okay,
limited.
Can God become poo?
I wouldn't like to answer that question, but you can assume what my answer is.
Okay,
God can do
go ahead. So can he become poo?
I really don't want to say the word here. I wouldn't ask.
There you go. So you have this crazy
thing about the Prophet Muhammad. So please back off of that.
No, no. The thing is, it's your theology.
Insult your God.
I'm not insulting, but I'm inquiring.
Different example.
Okay, can you bring a banana?
Sure, if you want to.
Then someone eats that banana.
You're doing it again. That's gross.
I'm not. But this is your theology.
Your theology is that God has something He can't do. He can't temporarily.
It does not befit His Majesty to become a banana.
You said it was an impossible choice. Impossible.
For Allah to make that choice.
It's impossible for God to make that choice.
He would never make that choice because it goes against.
It's impossible for Allah to make that choice.
He would not. No.
Why are you saying no?
He can do everything, but becoming limited and finite, he would never make that choice. Why? Because he is perfection. Eating, sleeping, we also excreting, dying, worshipping, crying, sleeping. These are imperfections, and this is something that Allah would never do because it's degrading him.
By your own metric, sure.
Yeah,
That was
authority.
the kind of whole point of the Incarnation, was to suffer, to join the human
Yeah,
nature.
and I think is we've been there before, that God suffered, is that God is perfect. God's suffering is not something that we will say about God.
Oh, so you would say it's impossible for God to experience suffering?
God created suffering. It's his creation. Yeah? If it's his creation, he wouldn't experience it because he created it.
So God can't experience suffering?
He doesn't need to.
I didn't say need to, I said can.
He doesn't want
Can
to.
God experience suffering?
He doesn't need to
It's
do that.
another impossible choice.
He doesn't want
It's
to.
another impossible choice.
He would never do that, no.
Gotcha.
Because
Another impossible choice.
Because he created it.
So it's
So we don't
something
mix.
It's an impossible choice. Another thing he can't choose to do.
He would never choose to do, yeah.
It's an impossible choice. He
would
cannot
never
choose to.
ever become a
Can
human.
he?
He would never do
So
that.
he can't.
Because
It's something he can't do.
because it's perfect.
Something he can't do. He's
Because
perfect,
it doesn't degrade
these two
himself.
things
Well,
that
you
we've
look,
already covered that he
is
can't
this
do.
look? If you believe that God can become a tree or a banana or a fruit and stuff, then you're saying that we would say like
If you want
there's
to put
no
limitations on God, you can go ahead.
no. Or you're limiting God into creation. That
God decided to voluntarily
I am a
limit
speck
himself.
on this earth. This earth is a speck in the solar system. The solar system is a speck in the galaxy. The galaxy is a speck in the Andromeda, so on and so
While
forth.
you're out there, can we talk about
It's a very
shooting stars being
specialized-
weapons against... Okay, carry on.
No, yeah. So yeah. The Quran is said this is a metaphysical reality. It's not you cannot
What
see
else is
jinn.
it impossible for God to choose to do? What else is it impossible for your God to choose to do?
That he would never choose to be a human. Quran is said, but when she's saying that God can become a tree and stuff, then you're becoming a pagan.
I'm trying to
No,
not
but
limit God.
you're polytheist now because the Hindus say the same thing. That God incarnates into the creation, becomes Krishna, and he becomes
Well, I mean, you think the Trinity is polytheism already, so you don't have to
Yeah.
say, you don't have to compare it. to
So
something else.
would you agree that's polytheism?
No, I said you would say that the Trinity is polytheism. So
Yes,
you don't
yes.
need to relate it to Christian.
Yeah. So the point that I'm making
You
to
think
the
it's
prophet.
polytheism because you
Yeah, because
you
three
think
gods.
there's a lot of things that your God can't do. And as soon
No,
as
we're
I
saying
think
that
it's possible,
God,
you think it
Abraham.
must be two gods.
Yeah, because Jesus is God, the Father is God, and the Holy Spirit is God,
They are
and
all
somehow they became
identical
one.
to the divine nature.
There cannot be three beings cannot be identical.
No. The three persons aren't identical to one another. They are all identical to the divine nature.
Yes, but they're not equal. Though. In knowledge, they're not equal. In power, they're not equal.
They are indeed. You're going to say, why did Jesus not know the hour? If Jesus doesn't know the hour, then he's not equal to God.
Yes,
He is the
absolutely,
Father.
yeah.
And I would say the obvious answer you've heard a million times, which God humbled himself and limited his access
Well,
to the
it
divine
doesn't-
nature when
okay.
he was incarnate
And
in
then
the human.
he became non-God. Then
No, just limited in power. Again, should we go back to the hammer thing?
so
Remember that.
you're just
If I pick
limiting
up a
God.
hammer,
You love to limit God.
limited himself.
So you're saying so my God doesn't limit himself. Did you?
Well, he does.
Did you
He
get
has
the point?
impossible choices.
No, becoming the creation is becoming limited. If you become a shoe, is that limiting yourself?
Can God limit himself if he wanted to?
If you became a shoe,
God
would you
decides
wait?
to voluntarily limit himself.
So
It's another impossible
you
choice.
you
Very
becoming a
limited
shoe, or would you become your shoe?
Oh my God. Why
So
are
you would
doing
become your
shirk?
shoe.
Why are you associating me with
It's
God?
not.
Can you stop
I'm
it?
answering a
Alhamdulillah, stop it.
question. Would you become a shoe?
Oh my God.
Is that limiting yourself?
Am I
Would you
God?
become a shoe?
Am I God?
But
Can I decide?
But would you
can I
become a
decide to voluntarily limit myself?
Okay,
but
would you
be
become an
able to
ant?
relinquish?
Would you become,
Why are you associating
would you
me
become
with
an
God?
ant?
Can you stop it?
Ant. It's your theology, man. Would you become an ant?
Am I God?
I'm asking you a question, man.
I know you are, and I'm telling you. It's a very
We
strange
can't answer.
question to ask me.
We can't answer.
I'm not God. Why are you
So,
asking
okay,
me if
would
I
you
would
in
do
any
something
way
with
want to
God?
become an ant
Am I God?
or a stone?
What happens when you ask these kind of questions? You ask,
Am I God?
Huh? Because
I
you know
God?
what? Because you know that it makes no sense. So why are you telling me that Allah became human then?
Huh?
Why would the creator of the universe become a limited human?
If he wanted to, why are
Okay,
you saying it's
or
impossible?
would you become an ant?
Am I God?
Would you enjoy to become an ant?
Am I God? I'll just keep saying this until you're done.
Or you
Am I
worship a
God?
man god, yes.
Am I God?
Would you worship a man god?
Am I God?
Or you could be God.
Am I God?
Or you could be God because you're a
Am I
man.
God?
Yeah. You could be God because you're a man. In your belief, yeah. In your belief,
Why are you asking
you
me
could
if I
be.
would become an
Because if man can become,
No, God
if-
became man. Other way around.
if God can become man, then man can become God.
How does that follow?
Because he can,
Is
because
man omnipotent?
if God can think like a human being, then you can think like God.
Yeah, we have a small.
Can you
we're
become,
finite
and
beings.
that's what Mormons believe.
You're saying.
That's what Mormons believe, that man can become
I
God.
know about Mormons too.
Yeah, and that's
Maybe
the.
let's stop.
Look me, honey, man. What? These guys.
You just said if
can't
God
see
can
anything.
become
Some people
man,
there.
man can become God. Can you talk me through that?
Because it logically follows is that because then the creation can become God as well, because
How
God
does that follow?
is because if God can limit himself and become a human and then think like a human, then that would make the human believe that they can also become God as well, because they can expand themselves and become divine.
How does expand themselves?
So
follow at all?
there's no
How does expand themselves
there's
follow
no
at all?
a disconnection
An
there.
infinite God temporarily limited himself into a finite body. How does that at all follow that a finite body can expand themselves into an infinite God? How does that make sense?
Yeah, they can somehow become divine
How does that follow?
because God became human.
Yes, but the inverse doesn't work.
It
'cause
can.
God is omnipotent,
It can.
but man isn't omnipotent.
Yes,
So how can you go the other direction?
Jesus was someone that was
No, you need
divine,
to slow down.
divine
You
God.
just said something really stupid.
No, I
You said
didn't.
if God can become man, then man can become
If
God.
God can
How?
limit itself
God
in
is
human brain.
omnipotent and can limit himself.
God can limit himself in
How can
a
man
limited
become
man.
God if man isn't omnipotent? How does that work? Sorry.
No, I'm just saying this because that's your sort of a belief system. But anyway, let's see why the Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet, or do you know? Or you don't know? Or you have a you just
Muhammad, sorry, say that again.
fixed with man God, fixated with the man God. But why don't you worship the one that is eternal, is one? Makes sense.
I do.
God is one,
Yep, I do.
right? Rationally makes sense.
Yep,
God is
I
independent.
worship one.
Independent, free of need. You believe that God is independent, free of need?
Yep, the divine nature is independent and free of.
Okay, is Jesus independent and free of need?
Almost. But the Son, the Son designation relies on the relationship between the Father and the Son, just as the Father relies on the relationship between the Son.
So he is not independent then. Allah is independent,
Well,
always, eternally,
not quite.
free of need.
Not quite. Because Allah is not identical to his love, which means he has love, which means he's a composite being.
That is nonsensical. You know, just because you have Greek philosophy and you talk about God in
how do you describe
disgusting
divine
ways,
simplicity then?
but you talk about God in
How do you how
disgusting
do you
ways,
describe
yeah.
divine
I
simplicity?
can't even
How
fathom
does
how
Allah
can
have
you
love?
say
How does
certain
Allah have
things.
love?
Is that you guys are just like, you know, just like talking about
Avoid the
God,
question. Avoid the
like
question by
it's
insulting
it's just mind-boggling that you
Avoid the
say
question by
that God
insulting
can
me.
become
Carry
a
on.
tree and all these
Avoid
things.
the question by
You cannot.
insulting me. Go on.
You know, we're saying Allah has attributes.
Yeah, how does Allah have love? How does divine simplicity and love work in Islam?
Allah is he is a being and he has love.
How does he
That's it.
have love?
It's simple.
How does he have love?
There's no how.
So he's a composite being.
No,
There's Allah
no.
and there's love.
That's
and
your
Allah has
Greek.
love.
That's your Greek philosophy.
So explain
that
it to me. Explain your own philosophy to
that's
me.
very
Come
simple.
on.
Allah is all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful.
Well, those are
He has
in the Quran, but
names.
carry on.
Yes, they are. Yes,
No,
they are.
God is only infinitely merciful and
No, it's
infinitely
not.
powerful in the Quran, but not all-seeing. The Quran doesn't say all-seeing.
Samiul Alim is
That's
in the Quran.
exegesis. That's exegesis.
Okay, no,
but
it's
carry
not. It's in the Quran.
on. Where?
Samiul Basir.
What does it say?
Surah Shura. It's. Have you not read the Quran?
Some of it, but no,
Okay,
it's
so
not
then
Holy
don't
Scripture.
say that then, because you're just
Can you
making
tell
yourself
me-
look stupid, yeah?
Can you tell me all of the attributes of God that you're giving there?
It,
All-powerful,
it's
all-seeing.
in the Quran and Sunnah, yeah? It's in the
No, I'm
Quran
saying
and
in the
Sunnah.
Quran.
Yeah, Quran, it says Samiul Alim, it says that he is As-Sami, the hearing, and Alim, the knowing. He is Al-Basir, the seeing.
Where's
It's
the
in the
love in
Quran. Al-Wadud, you want me to show you?
Where is it? The conversation's almost over.
No, no. yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Say that-
Allah's love.
say that,
How
yeah.
does Allah have love?
It's
Is
it's
it
one of his
part him?
attributes.
Is it necessary?
It's
in his
an
nature?
it's an attribute.
It's an attribute of God.
Simple,
God has
yeah.
attributes. Great.
Yeah, great.
So who combines those attributes?
No one. What are you talking about? Who combines them attributes? What are you talking about?
So Allah has attributes.
Yes, that's it. Simple.
He
Yeah.
has parts.
No. Who said that?
Me.
Okay, so you're making that up
How does Allah have love if it's not part of Him?
because we don't say things like that about Allah.
So if you have two things, if you have Allah and you have love, and they are somehow together,
In
something
your-
had to combine them, didn't they?
No.
So
That's
they're
your
just
assumption.
free-floating.
But what's your evidence from that from the
Did
Quran?
Allah create love to
Is
then
that
have love?
is that in the Quran?
Is what in the Quran?
Is that, remember, we go back to the Quran, yes? We don't go back to
No,
your Greek philosophy, yes? Allah has names and attributes. There are types of attributes. There's attributes that is that, his essence, yes? And there's attributes, there are transitive attributes that connect with the that connect with the creation. Yeah, for example, he is merciful, he forgives, yes? He's all-knowing, yeah, yes? So the point that I'm making is that anyone that tries to separate the essence and the attributes is evil person.
Okay, cool. Love. How does love exist? When was love created?
Allah has always been the loving.
But He's not love. Allah isn't love. Allah has.
It's one of his attributes.
Okay. He has love, but He isn't love itself, right?
It's one of his attributes.
Yeah, but how does He have love if it's not part of it?
Because he's Allah.
Okay, so when was that attribute created? When was love created?
It's always, it's eternal.
So it's part of Allah? He's love.
We don't use these words with Allah, no.
Why not?
Because we don't use Greek philosophy. We don't use these.
You could use any philosophy. You can give
Yeah,
me
yeah,
any argumentation
we don't
about
say
how
that.
this works. So are you saying that Allah and love were created at the same time?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay,
I'm
so
saying
when was love
Allah
created?
has names and attributes.
Okay,
Allah is
so
eternal,
is
and
love
His
part of
attributes are eternal with Him.
Okay.
That's
they're
it.
eternal
Simple,
with
isn't it?
How are they combined? Do you mean that?
Who told you that they combined? The attributes
Allah
describe
has an attribute of
describe
love.
the
So love
essence.
exists whether it's conjoined to Allah or not. It exists.
What do you
Love
mean?
is-
We don't use those words for Allah, no.
Okay. You need to explain it to me. And how else does it work?
It is very simple, and it's not something
You
that
have Allah
you're
and you have
using.
love. And Allah has an attribute of love, right?
Yes.
But it exists distinct
It's
from
not
love.
separate, no.
So how do I have
The
love?
attribute describes. Is it separate from you?
Is love separate from me?
Yeah.
Yeah, love is a concept that exists, and I do some love, I have some love, yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm a
but is
composite
it separate
being.
from you?
Kind of, yeah. 'Cause
So
I'm a composite being.
it's flying around somewhere on the other side of the park. No, it's not. It's there you go. So that's why, if you talk about Islamic theology, you have to understand how we take it.
Well, I'm ready for you to tell me how it works.
Yeah, I've explained it to you very simply in simple words.
No, you don't. You said Allah has attributes, and the attributes were co-eternal with Him. So how are they
No,
joined together? Like,
no,
how does Allah
they're
have
not joined.
So Allah doesn't have attributes.
Allah has attributes, yeah.
But how are the attributes given to Him?
They're not given to him. He's always had them eternally with him. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. He just, I don't understand. I've answered the questions.
Basically, he's trying to understand Allah. That's a totally different subject to understand.
Well, yes, because we've already discussed you can't understand God. God isn't rational.
There was another problem was using the chain example where there's a never-ending chain and you come back to a create. There has to be a creator where it will start.
No, when it comes to the names and the attributes of Allah, we don't separate them. This is what they do in the Greek. In the Greek philosophy, you do parts and what is a part and whatever. We just say that we accept what Allah revealed to us is that Allah has names and attributes. He has, He's got 99 names and attributes, and they are eternal, and they're not parts, they're not separate.
So love isn't separate from Allah.
Absolutely no. Who told you that?
Okay, so
Where did you get that
Allah is
from?
love. It's like inherent to His nature. Is love. He has love inherent to who God is.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Allah is loving, but He only loves the believers.
What does He do to the disbelievers?
He puts them in hell.
Comment. I can't answer that because Catholic.
Yeah.
I tend to.
Yeah.
Catholic.
So, let's try and conclude because this is so long. We've been there for a long time. Anyway, I'm a bit tired as well, so I had a difficult time today. Anyway, thank you. Let's conclude. Anyway, thank you for your time and thanks for everyone else.
I'm sure we'll have future.
Yeah, talks. Anyway, thank you.